let's move on to our final Indiana story this week. And this one's tragic and unfortunate. So, Wednesday, police in Whitestown responded to a 911 call about a suspected home invasion at the Heritage subdivision in Whitestown. And for the record, that just sounds like a place that's hostile to anyone half a shade darker than ivory. And there they found Maria Florinda Rios Perez, age 32, dead from a gunshot wound. The cleaning lady and her husband were attempting to enter the home for their job when a person inside shot the mother of four through the door. Apparently, the couple had the wrong address, though the husband, who could do nothing but comfort his dying wife as she bled out, insisted they were at the right house. Police have yet to press charges or release the name of the shooter, but they have been active tamping down online rumors that the homeowner in question is a local police officer. Now, this is just such a tragic story. You know, we're talking about the proliferation of guns in our society, and shit like this is what happens when we have guns everywhere and few consequences for folks who use them in incidents like this. Unfortunately, and Ross, maybe you can speak to this as an attorney. I think what you're going to find here is that this person can say, "Oh, they felt threatened." Scary brown person on my porch, and they shoot first and ask questions later. I want to be wrong. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, look, it's a defense certainly that a person can raise. I think if you feel like somebody's attacking you, you have a right to defend yourself. And if you feel like somebody's invading your house, you have the right to defend yourself. As I say, that is a defense. The trouble for me on something like this is if the tables were turned, I think the shooter would be charged and tried, and the shooter would be able to raise that defense. What I'm seeing here is sort of a foregone conclusion that this person isn't going to be charged. They aren't going to be named. There's not going to be a trial, and they're not going to have to raise that defense. That it's just going to be assumed that, and I don't know the race of the shooter, but I have an idea.
He lives in the Heritage in Whitestown.
Yeah. And that to me, look, I'm a criminal defense lawyer, and I would defend that person if they were charged. And that's obviously, without knowing all the facts, that's probably a defense that can be raised. But it is troubling, and you see this again and again, that in certain situations, a prosecutor will just decide for himself or herself that, well, this was self-defense. I'm not going to charge that person. Whereas, again, when the tables are turned, it's always you're under arrest, and if you've got a defense, good luck. So that's the most troubling part. And not naming the person, that I can understand while you're investigating, especially if they don't end up being charged. But somebody's dead, so to me, I'm gonna defer to the court system, and not to the police or a prosecutor deciding on their own that this is okay.
Leslie, okay, fine. You gotta, you have a weapon. You're in your home. You think somebody is coming in. Don't you have an obligation to say, like, who's there first? Or, you stand back and you wait for him to come in the door and you say, hey, what the hell are you doing here, before you start shooting? I mean, my God, man.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of issues. I think sometimes gun ownership can fuel more paranoia, or people who have paranoia would perhaps purchase more guns with the idea of protecting themselves. But then you see, for instance, media like Fox entertainment, constantly pushing some narrative of, people who are they would consider different as criminals, and you see that coming from the president, and that just fuels propaganda and misinformation. It is an absolute tragedy, and it's on all levels. And for this person to not been perhaps needing to.
Oh, a bummer. We got the kind of a poor connection here with Leslie, but I just want to say, this is a mother of four. Three of those kids are age 10 or younger, and they're.
Can I add something? Remember, I've talked to
Yeah,
you on your
please,
show about
Leslie.
how I had my face slashed in New York, and I went to a priest because I wasn't sure if I should go in front of a grand jury, and the priest said,
Oh, man,
they
Leslie, leave
face
us hanging there.
consequence. Kind
All
of
right. Oh,
consequence.
man. Apologize for
Well,
the poor connection
Leslie
there.
is, I
We're
mean,
not
she
getting
hits
quite
on
everything from you
something.
there, Leslie.
Leslie hit on something that was really right, though, is, kind of like the previous story we're talking about, this constant talk about violence and fear and you're under attack and the country's going to hell and everything's dangerous. Fear, that again, that also this is not the first case we've seen in the United States of someone shooting someone through their door. And in all those other cases that I know about, those people are at least prosecuted. Not all were convicted, but they're at least prosecuted. So, you'd like to see that process take place.
Ross, just from a legal standpoint, can we do anything about this quote unquote castle doctrine? I mean, you should have to show a little more threat than, I don't know, there was somebody on my property before you start, coming in guns blazing.
Look, I agree. I think Indiana's prior self-defense law. Look, people ought to have self-defense. Look, you don't have to wait to get beat up to fight back. You don't have to wait to get shot. You don't have to let somebody break into your house. But what the castle doctrine, what the stand your ground, when the test becomes subjective and not objective, not what a reasonable person would do, that's where you really have a problem, where you can tell a jury, and it protects police officers again and
Going
again and
back here,
again,
Fred.
where they say, well, I felt endangered, I had to act because this is how I felt. Well, look, that's an easy out, especially if you're talking about a jury that's predisposed to want to protect somebody for maybe not the right reasons, because they're a cop or because they're white or because whatever the case may be. That's my real problem with it, is when the issue is, all you have to do is say, I felt threatened. Well, look, um, it has to be reasonable, and a good prosecutor, obviously, who's trying that case, can still get a conviction. A jury still has to find that it's justified, but yeah, I think overall, I'd like to go back to a reasonableness standard, not a subjective test.